This is David I here in Scotts Valley, California. And with me on the line is Jim McKeith from Idaho.
Hello.
And Al Menarino from New York.
Welcome.
Okay, it's great to have you all with us. Welcome to the lesson 1 of the Developer Direct Learning Series, Mobile App Development. We've got 6 lessons on our schedule every Monday and Wednesday at this time. For some reason, you can't make the 10 a.m., which is 1 p.m. Eastern time. We're holding these during extended lunch hour, 12 to 1, 1 to 2 for C++ and Object Pascal for East Coast time, and then we're doing the same thing on West Coast time, U.S. So if you can't make one, it'll be the same presentation for each lesson at 12 o'clock for C++ Pacific time and 1 o'clock for Object Pascal Pacific time. So it's happening twice in the morning, and each of the lessons. Today, it's all about getting set up, making sure everything is set okay, and then we'll cover more and more about building mobile applications for each of the 6 lessons over the next 3 weeks, Monday and Wednesday. So this first lesson, lesson 1, is about setting up your development environment, making sure everything is set. I've got tablets and smartphones connected over here. I've got a 7-port USB 3 hub that I've got all these connected to. I've got Google Glass, but I haven't connected it this morning. Maybe we'll play with that another time if we have time. Also, we're going to talk about an application we're going to build slowly over the next 6 lessons, a business application. We're going to get oriented to the IDE, build an app, look at some samples, and get ourselves started. And then there's a review at the end. Homework really is to play with the product and try things out. And also we'll talk about what we're going to cover next time and have Q&A. So you can use the question area in GoToWebinar. And this is all about building mobile applications using the Object Pascal programming language. The great thing about our products is that we give you a whole set of tools, components, libraries, examples, documentation to help you build mobile applications. So if you need to build up the user interface of your mobile application, we've got all sorts of components: edit box, list box, toolbars, wizards to help you get going. If you need to access data, whether it's XML, whether it's a local INI file, whether it's SQL data that's local to your mobile application. If you're working and building mobile applications for your enterprise, we have enterprise connectivity to remote SQL databases like Oracle and Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, and so on. Also, we can connect to any web services or REST services you might have in your enterprise, as well as the ability to build multi-tier applications to separate the business logic and database access from the mobile part of your application. If you want to support cloud infrastructures, we have support for connecting to application services, backend as a service in the cloud, put your applications in the cloud, and then all the tools you need, the compilers, the IDE, the linkers, the debuggers, everything that is required to do modern mobile application development. The great thing about our products is one set of projects for building an application that runs on Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android, and all the tool chains and tools and compilers and debuggers, everything that's required to support all of those 4 major platforms. The great thing is you can build a lot of the user interface and build a lot of the business logic using the same source code and just recompile it for the different platforms. So whether you're on iOS 6 or iOS 7, 7.1.2 is the latest release now. Whether you're on Android 4.4 or 4.4.2, then we're testing with the next version of iOS and Macintosh with Yosemite. We're testing, I guess it's L, the L letter. It doesn't have a name yet for Android. We're doing a lot of testing along the way to make sure that when those platforms are ready, that our development tools are ready. And Windows, we're supporting, Windows 7, Windows 8, 8.1, Vista, and Macintosh OS 10. I'm using OS 10 Mavericks, 10.9.2 on my MacBook Pro here that I'm using. And then I've got Parallels virtual software so that I can run Windows 7 and our IDE tools that run on Windows as a guest operating system on one notebook computer. So setting up the environment involves installing the latest release of our software, either Rad Studio XZ6 Update 1 or App Method 1.14. You can use the trial, which is the Architect Edition or Business Edition for App Method. You can use those, and it gives you all the capabilities of mobile and database and multi-tier and all of the technologies that you'll learn in this lesson over the next 3 weeks. That's a 30-day trial. Or if you have the shipping version of our products, you'll need Rad Studio or Delphi or C++ Builder. You'll need to have mobile enablement to do mobile development. So Rad Studio comes with mobile in the Pro Edition. Delphi and C++ Builder, mobile comes in the Enterprise and Above Edition, or you can add the mobile add-on pack. So having mobile, App Method comes with everything and all the platforms for mobile. App Method gives you everything for 30 days, and then after the 30 days, it drops down to free forever C++ and Android native code development. And then you can purchase additional platform and support upgrading your App Method from the free forever version. So if you don't have the latest versions of App Method or Rad Studio, go and grab the downloads, and then you'll have the right stuff, at least for this course, over the next 30 days. Otherwise, upgrade and purchase, build mobile applications, get them in the store, make lots of money. As part of the install of our products, there's a choice to install the Android NDK and SDK. The SDK and the native NDK get pre-installed and pre-configured in your IDE and on your computer. You'll want to run the Android SDK Manager to make sure you have your latest packages for the devices and versions of Android you might have. And that's installed by default, but you can choose to say, I've already got the SDK and NDK, and then you just set up a configuration to point where they are on your hard drive. For OS X and iOS, you need to make sure that you have a version of the operating system that we support. And then also install this utility we call the Platform Assistant Server, or PA server, that runs on the Mac and is a conduit through TCP/IP from your Windows IDE to the Macintosh to iOS on a Macintosh. That can be a shared Macintosh on your network somewhere, or in my case, it's all on the same machine because it's a MacBook Pro, a notebook. Then you need to set up the connection to the SDKs and the tools that are available. And again, the installer by default will set up all the tool chain for Android and all of the locations of Java, the SDK, and the NDK. For OS X, you need to make sure you have Xcode, the latest Xcode, because we use some of the command line tools for Xcode, and that you install that Platform Assistant. And we'll take a look at that in just a moment. And then finally, I hit the connector. That's why that popped up. I hit the connector on my Nexus 7 device. It's got a weak connector. All right. For the devices, make sure your Android device is set up for development. For that, you just go under the settings and go to the More button and choose your build. Tap on it 7 times, and developer options will show up as a choice. And you can then turn on USB debugging. And I turn on stay awake. And you need to install a USB driver so you can get from your Windows platform or your Macintosh platform to your Android device. For iOS, you need to make sure that you've registered your device for development with your Apple account, that you have provisioning profiles for doing operations on the devices, and that is pretty easy. It's $99 a year for having an Apple iOS developer account. Let's take a look at my development environment. I'm using App Method. And in App Method, under Tools, Options, there's the SDK Manager is one of the choices. And the SDK Manager allows you to set up the SDK versions for your different target devices and target platforms. We already know about the Windows SDK because the IDE itself runs on Windows. So here we've got that set. That's already pre-built in, and we know where everything is. Otherwise, we need to make sure we understand where the SDK files are, where the NDK files are, and where Java is. So there's a wizard. If you click the Add button and you choose Android, then it will, you say, okay, I want an SDK version. It'll show up. In my case, it already got pre-set up as part of the install because I checked that install checkbox. And then all of these get set. Now, if you move things to another spot on your hard drive, then you'll need to go in and set these different paths or remove, click delete, and re-add and point to where your SDK and NDK are. And then these will get set up as configurations. For iOS device and for OS X, I clicked down here again, selected the platform. I had to tell it where my PA server was, and then I could choose which SDK I wanted to install. And I've already pre-done that. And the same thing on OS 10. If I select OS 10, then I have two SDKs installed, the old 10.8.5 and 10.9.2, which is OS 10 Mavericks, which is the one I'm using currently. So I've got those predefined. And what those do for iOS and Android and OS 10 is it keeps track of where all the libraries and framework files are. And if you have some other files, like you have some third-party libraries or frameworks, you can click this button to add new items, find where they give the path where they are in your Macintosh, and they'll show up on the list as well. And if you've made any changes on the Macintosh side for iOS or OS 10, you can click the Update Local File Cache button. And the tool chain needs to know where these libraries and debug symbols and other things are on the Macintosh. We can't keep those files on Windows because Apple says you can't do that. Over on my Macintosh side, I've got my PA server installed already. It's running and sitting there, and it's listening on IP address 10.20.5.64. What I've done is I copy over to a folder the Platform Assistant Server package file, and then you just double click on it and it gets installed into your applications area. So there's the PA server there, and I've created an alias just so I can launch it from my desktop, and that's what brings up the listener on this side. The other thing I have to show you, just so you can see it, is I've got Xcode installed, the latest Xcode, and that just shows me under Window Organizer that I've got my iPad installed, and it's got valid provisioning profiles, and my iPhone is installed, and it's got valid provisioning profiles. If we want to, we can look at applications we've installed, the console of operations that take place, any crashed. I've got some things like Sports Center seems to crash. Those apps always seem to crash occasionally, even the ones you purchase or download for free from the App Store. All right. So it looks like my environment is all set up and ready to go. Also, there are videos available for setting up your environment, both in Rad Studio, Delphi, and C++ Builder, and in App Methods. So you can always watch the videos, and there's also documentation in the help files and in the doc wikis to get you set up with any additional information you might need for your configuration. So our devices are set up, our tool chains are set up, our development environment is set up. The next thing is I wanted to cover, we're over the lesson plan, we're going to build up a business application. We're also going to look at other samples and other parts of mobile development. But this business application is a pretty traditional one. It's got customers' orders, employees, items, vendors, parts, all of that that's stored in a database. It's an Interbase database, could have been another database, but we happen to have this in our samples that are sample databases that come with the products. So we're going to use that one because it's got the master detail relationships and enough tables and enough data to work with. Here's the data model. We've got customers with a one-to-many. Customers can have many orders. We've got our vendors that we get parts from, and those parts are related to the orders and the order items of the order. So, and how many, what the part number is and the quantity and so on. And then employees are involved in the orders as well. Okay, so this was a bitmap created with ER Studio, which is our data modeling tool here at Embarcadero. So it let me just reverse engineer the Interbase database and take a look and visualize it. We also have an existing Windows app that was built for this company. The company is Marine Adventures is what it's called. It's a company that sells scuba diving parts to dive shops. And so it has customers, it has orders, it has inventory, you know, all the usual things. So it's a business app. They built a Windows version. They now need a mobile version. So we're going to help them build up over the next 6 lessons a mobile version of parts of the application to do things like look at customer information, look at the orders they have, look at the balances that it's available, last invoice, so we can edit customers if they change their phone number or whatever. We can look at our parts inventory and see how many parts of each kind we have on hand, what things we have on order, We can see employees that are involved. So it's a nice business app to build a mobile version of a business app. All right. The ID gives us all sorts of different views, and this is an eye chart, so I'll leave that for you. I should have said all of the slides are, I've got a blog on my David I blog. The slides are available for download, so you can follow along both in PowerPoint format and in PDF. So if you go to blogs.embarcadero.com/DavidI, you'll see this link here to Code Central. Download it's a zip file, unzip it, and you'll get the slides and the PDF to follow along with all of these slides that are available. So it's a rich environment. It's got a design view. It's got a source code view. There's little tabs at the bottom, a history or change management view. The Object Inspector lets you set properties for the visual and non-visual controls that are part of your environment, of your design, of your application. The structure window shows you if you're in the code view, the structure of classes. It shows you in the design view what components you have. The project windows where you set the target platforms like iOS and Android. The tool palette lets you choose visual and non-visual controls to drag and drop them in the design surface. Okay. This is the sort of block diagram of the component and runtime library framework. You can use, in our case, this lesson, Object Pascal, but you can use C++ as well. We have the tool chain. We use the FireMonkey visual and non-visual controls and the runtime library. And that has the interfaces to the platform APIs that we need to use for both 2D and 3D graphics. And then we can build our application using the project and project group to build desktop and mobile applications, all with the same source code. For developing, we just drag and drop components, build up our user interface, write some code. If you know how to do event-driven programming on click, on change, on location change, these are these events that fire underneath the covers. Our component model supports properties, which can be published or public or private. Methods, which are methods you can call inside of the components. The runtime library functions, and the events that you hook to do the things that happen when you click on a button, when you change a value, when you select a checkbox or a radio button. And again, it comes with visual and non-visual components. And we'll see all these in action over the next several weeks and the 6 lessons. So we're going to start by building just a simple Object Pascal mobile application using the blank template and put some controls on it. The great thing is there's controls to support the look and feel and the orientation of your application, whether you're in tablet mode, smartphone mode, portrait mode, landscape mode, whether you lock down the mode. We've got a gesture touch component, so you can use these touch screens on these mobile devices. You can use the combination of layouts, anchors, and alignments to make sure your user interface looks nice on each different form factor or in landscape and portrait mode. And you can also see what it looks like at design time for a lot of the devices that are popular today. You can also use Tools, Options, Form Designer, the Device Manager, create your own look at design time. And again, the design time look has nothing to do necessarily with the runtime look, but we'll see that in action. So let's say File, New, FireMonkey Mobile Object Pascal example. These are the templates. There's 8 starting project templates that you can use. We'll start just with the blank application, but you can create a 3D app, a 2D app, a 2D app with a header and footer, a tabbed application, and so on. Let's just start with a blank application. So now we're in the design surface. If we want to look at the code surface, the code behind, here's the code in Object Pascal underneath the covers. I'm just clicking these tabs at the bottom. History list, well, there's nothing changed so far. This is the buffer in memory. If we started saving this, we'd see differences over time between the different versions of our product we've saved. And if you're connected into Subversion, into version control, then the history view will show you all the different views and messages and so on that's associated with Subversion repository. This is the device view. The device view at design time lets you see what an application might look like either in iOS 6 or iOS 7, the latest version, what it might be on an iPhone 5, different size for height, for example, and width. If it's a tablet, iPad, if it's a Nexus 4 device, a Samsung Galaxy S4, maybe a Nexus 7, 2012, or 2013. And again, this is just so we're oriented at design time. The target platforms you build ultimately and the devices you run on are going to be what the application will look like. But this is a good way to have the look and feel when you're building your application, at least at design time. We have a lot of layouts, so we can go to the tool palette and type the word layout, and it shows us different layouts. A grid layout. Grid layout is you put controls in a grid layout, they'll have the same height and width. We have a flow layout where they flow from right to left or left to right and build down. Also just a layout, which is a container for putting the controls. So we can say, for example, align this layout to the top part of the application. So let's have a layout in the top, or we could align it to the client area, or maybe the center and whatever. I can also use this search box up here, and I can type part of the components that we want. For example, if I want a button, I can type a button and then say, okay, here's the T button. The button, let's put this button in lower right-hand corner, and we can use the design view to rotate it. Notice it stays, but if we go into landscape mode, then that button seems to disappear. So we can use anchors to anchor the right and bottom of the button, this right bottom part. Now, when we go into landscape versus portrait mode, the button will stay in the lower right-hand corner of the layout that it's within. We can also use the structure window to drag the button. Now that button is parented to the form, not to the layout, but let's put it back and parent it to the layout. So you can parent components and drag and drop them wherever you want. You can also do that in code. The next property, and this is the object inspector, we can change the caption. So this is click me, for example, and now notice at design time we see the caption on, or the text property of the button, showing that there's some additional text settings. For example, setting the font, setting the color, setting the horizontal alignment if you wanted that to be trailing where the text is over on the right-hand side. Usually text is centered inside of a button. So there's lots of properties and sub-properties. You can use the object inspector for that. And again, you see the design surface up here. What we'll do is we'll put a, let's put a date edit box, for example. So here's the date. And that'll bring up a sort of calendar choosing application. We can put a text property on here. Let's put an edit box down, and let's align the two of these. Let's just leave them anchored to their upper left and top, so they'll sort of be near each other inside again of the layout. All right. So for event-driven programming, what we want to do is when we click on this button, we want to do something like, for example, take the edit box and change whatever text we put into it and change the text of the button, for example. So we can do that a couple ways. We could double-click on the button here, or we can go to the events page in the Object Inspector for the control that's currently selected. And we've got a couple options here, on click, on enter, on exit, and so on. I just want to use the on click, so when I click on that, it will generate a wrapper around the event handler for the button click. And what I want to do is say button1.text is going to get edit one's text property. So you'll see popping up when we start typing selection list as well. And this is just code completion. As we start typing, we see the choices that are available. Here's the property, text property. And then what we'll do is set the text in the edit box into the button. Right? We can switch back either by clicking this toolbar button, toggle form unit, or go down to the bottom of the tab and switch back to design mode. Target platform, Android, iOS, and iOS simulator for Object Pascal. We can also add a platform, Win32. We can actually test this mobile application on our Windows interface. So here it brings up the Windows calendar entry. And then we can say hello. In the text box, click the button and it changes the text to hello. Right? So that's like a mobile preview if you want to do some testing of parts of a mobile application on 32-bit Windows. Right? we can use the simulator. So the simulator, again, is going to talk through the PA server over to our Macintosh side, which is over here, and it's listening. And we can tell the environment, what do we want that application to look like? Do we want the simulator to come up in iPad, iPhone, or iPhone 5? I've got a 4S, so I want it to come up, say, looking like iPhone. So we'll compile and run this application. It'll deploy it over to the Macintosh. And now here's my simulator that should come up. Here it comes. There's the splash screen. Let's make this, let's see, let's make it a little bit smaller so it fits and we can see all the parts. So here now we've got the date picker for the calendar, because we said date edit. So we get that nice animated, I'm not sure how it looks on go to webinar. And then we can say, click me here and say we're done. And then the button becomes click me over here. Oh, I guess I changed it to the same thing. So let's go hello world, and we're done. And now when we click the button text property changes to hello world. So that's a simulator, which gives us a few things. Shake, gesture, rotate left. So if we rotate left, notice the button stays in the lower right-hand corner and the edit boxes stay in where they're anchored in the top left of where they appear. And, well, I'm not doing anything with shake, and I'm not doing anything with location. There's a few things you can do, but mostly you'll want to have a real device, right? So let's go back and stop this application, and then that's just a reminder that we're there. Let's go and pick our Android device, and let's save this. Let's see. Let's save it as Unit 2 and Project 2. Why not? Okay, and then I've got my Android device connected. It's a Samsung Galaxy S4. So Android, I'm using the latest SDK and the Android device. So let's go and compile and run this for Android. I've got this listener here. So it's listening through the debug interface to my device so that I can show it to you on the GoToWebinar system. So it's now generating an APK file, an application package file, and then it's going to install it over on my Android device. So we'll see it pop up and then the screen come up here in a moment. This utility that Jim McKeith wrote lets me see what I'm doing. So now the date edit shows up as an Android data. So that's a standard Android date picker. We can choose that, hit the set button and come back. And then go to the edit box and say hello. And then click the button, and the button gets set to hello. So the same application, same source code written in Object Pascal is running on Android. Let's go and run the iOS device. Let's run it on my iPhone. So let's go and compile and run. And I'll go over to this utility that I have, which is the Reflector app. Let's close the simulator. And this Reflector app lets you see what is going to show up. So here's the Project 2 icon appearing on my iOS device, which is to the left of me. I got 4 devices sitting here, so I got to remember which one to pick up. Okay, and here now is the date picker, which is again the nice scrolling iOS 7 date picker, and I can put some text here and be done. Click the button. The button changes to the text, whatever I put into the edit box, right? Okay. So there's a simple application running in the environment and talking to the different devices that are running on Android, iOS Simulator, and on Win32. And then if we wanted to create a Win64 desktop application, we can just add to the project group, say add new project, say Object Pascal project, FireMonkey mobile application, for example, and then that same blank application, throw away the form for that application. Let's just remove this from the project. And let's go and add to project 1 an existing file. And the existing file we want is that unit 2. Okay. So here's the user interface of our application. Again, looking like whatever we want it to look like. But in this case, it's going to run on Windows. And we can do desktop applications and mobile applications in the same target. All right. There's lots of samples that come with the products, mobile samples and mobile snippets. So we can go back to the IDE, close this one off, say no to all. And then we can go under File, Open Project. And I've got a shortcut, a favorite here that's set for samples. So for Object Pascal and C++, we've got samples are more in-depth, more lines of code examples for mobile development. The snippets are 1 line of code, 2 lines of code, 5, maybe 10 lines of code, sometimes no lines of code. And so there's lots of samples for accelerometer, for camera control, for the date picker that you saw me use, for gestures, all the different things in user interface elements and so on. The mobile samples are broken down into different categories: cloud, devices and sensors, Google Glass support, user interface. So all of those are available for you to use to learn from the samples that we deliver with the product. And a couple of samples, I already showed you the date picker component, the T-date edit component, and it working. There's a custom picker, so let's go and say File, New, FireMonkey Object Pascal mobile app. Let's just use the blank one again. And let's put down a custom picker. So let's go up here and put combo box. And a combo box under the covers on Windows will use a Windows combo box. On the Macintosh, it will use the custom picker, and same thing on Android. So we'll go down to the items and let's go and put some items in: red, blue, green, yellow, for example. And we'll have those choices. And then let's go and run this on Android. There, we're still there. So let's go and run the custom picker for Android. And then let's see, it might give me a certificate error if it sees a Pascal version versus a C+ version with the same name. Let's just go and make sure. Should be okay. They were built with the same compiler and toolchain. Okay, here it comes. So here's the using the combo box. Then we get the custom picker that's associated on Android. So let's choose green, for example, and we're back. Now let's go and switch over to iOS device and hit run and switch to Reflector, and it should compile and launch here in just a moment. So again, when I use a combo box component on the different platforms, it will switch and use the native control, the custom picker for Android and iOS. So here it is, and we can go and select, and now we have the custom picker, red, green, yellow, blue. We choose the first one, and that's the choice. So lots of sample applications and trying to map the look and feel where we can to the underlying user interface. And in fact, all of our controls are pixel for pixel compatible. When you go down and use a magnifying glass, you'll see all of those inside of it. You'll see that all the buttons and everything else are the right iOS 7 look. And if Apple changes the look, you know, we were there almost the same day, maybe the next day, when iOS 7 came out with its flatter look. So we don't worry about that. And same thing with Android. When changes happen, we can change the look and feel over time to match whatever takes place. Some of the other examples, let's bring up this tab sliding example. What the tab sliding example does is when you have multiple tab items in a tab control and you want to move from one tab to another tab, you can use a gesture component, and then you can associate that gesture with the tab control. So here the gesture manager is on the tab control, and there's different gestures you can choose. There's the left-right gesture. There's, I think, 32 different standard gestures, and there's also the interactive gestures of two-finger tap, tap and hold, rotate, pan, zoom, a long tap, double tap. You need that to survive in Zombieland, if you saw the movie Zombieland. And then you can associate actions. There are some pre-built actions for tab controls as part of our standard actions. So if you want to go to the next tab, and the previous tab, or you want to change to a specific tab, we have actions associated with it. And so the code behind just says if it's a previous tab action and you're not at the beginning, if you're at the beginning, then don't change the tab because there's no previous tab. If you're not at the end of the number of tab controls that are available, then increment the tab control using the tabs array to get the next tab item in the tab control. So pretty straightforward code for handling using a swipe gesture to move between one tab, the next tab, the next tab, the next tab. Now on Android, we also have this key handler. There's a hardware backup key, that little arrowy back key on Android. So we can use that back key to move to previous tabs and then say we've handled it versus the hardware back key taking you out of the application. So this sample has that code built in for Android as well. All right. And again, this setting down here has nothing to do in the design surface with what it's going to look like on your application. I could say, show it to me what it's going to look like in iOS, but I could go and say my target platform is Android, and then I'll get an Android application. So let's go and let's do another thing. Let's go in that tab control, which has a list, has 2 tab items, and let's add another tab item. And on tab item 3, let's go and select it in our tab control. So tab control has a property called active tab. So let's set tab item 3, and then on tab item 3, let's put a label. And this will just be something that says this is tab item 3. This is tab. Just so we know that we're on tab item 3, right? Now, the other thing is that the tab control is one of those components that will remember what the last property setting you had. So, for example, active tab. So if you always want tab item 1 to come up, you either have to remind yourself to set the active tab to tab item 1. But let's say sometimes you forget and you end up with tab item 3 or tab item 2 or some other setting. What you can do is you can go to your form, go to the onCreate event, and what we'll do is we'll say tab control 1, active tab equal to tab item 1, sorry. So just want to set the active tab when the application starts to always bring the first tab item up. So let's go and compile and run this app and switch over to Android by using that little viewer utility that Jim wrote. There are also other viewer systems for showing your Android device on your desktop screen or on a spare monitor. There's a Java-based one. There's VM Lite, which uses a VNC technology to display. I was having trouble with some of that. So here, if I gesture to the left, then it slides to the next one and slides to the third one, right? Tab item 3. And then I gesture to the right and gesture right. You can't see me, but I'm making the gestures right and left. And then if there's no more for it to go. If I hit the back button, then everything comes okay, unless I'm at the beginning of our application, right? Okay. All right. And then, so those are just some of the sample applications. What I want you to do is constantly be going out to the sample folders of either Red Studio, Delphi, or App Method, and take a look and load those examples in and take a look at the source code behind them and build application. Scrollable form is a nice one to check out. If you have a form that would like maybe it's from a Windows app that has lots of fields for data entry. You might want to put that on multiple forms and do a kind of animated or move from form to form subforms in a sense. And that's what scrollable form demo shows you. The other example that that you might want to check out is how to handle keyboard handling. So let's go to, I think it's this one here, a keyboard toolbar. Let's throw away the tab sliding one. So the toolbar, oh, that's not the one I want. Okay. Okay, let's go back and say open project. Okay. Okay, I think it's back here in snippets. Let's see. Nope, sorry. It is over in samples. Okay, I got to watch the time. All right. Here it is. Scrollable form, I think, is the one that we want. Yeah, so this is an example. What it uses a component called a vertical scroll box. And the vertical scroll box, you can orient it to move the contents. In my case, a layout, which is the whole user interface of the app, is to move it up and down, to scroll it vertically. So moving it up and down. And that way, if you have an edit control at the bottom, that when you're in that edit control, you can see it even though the virtual keyboard would come up to the top. So take a look at the scrollable form demo in the samples folder. And also, we support keyboard types on all the keyboards. So this one has a number pad. There are lots of different keyboards, including the default keyboard. So numbers and punctuation, URL keyboard, email address keyboard. And so you can set for each different edit box or memo, anything that edits text, you can set a keyboard type for each of those. All right. So for our business app, we need to get started, and we're going to use the tabbed project template. We're going to put some controls on it to get ready for the next time. Customers tab and employees tab, parts and settings. So let's go into the IDE and say File New. Let's do a FileMonkey mobile application for Object Pascal. And we'll choose the tabbed application template. And we need to create a folder for it. So let's go here and make a folder called OP Biz App. And that's where we're going to store this. Let's not save the one we were working on. So here we've got 4 tabs at the bottom. We start with 4 tabs, and then we have a gesture manager for moving between each of the tabs and the tab control. And that's built in for you. We can assign the gesture manager if we want to. Eventually, you'll see that in the future lessons. So we can move between tabs. The other way is we can tap the tabs. So the first text item is going to be for customers. The second one, let's go back, was employees. So here's our employees. The third one is our parts. And the fourth one is for settings. Now, Apple has said you can only have 4 tabs. If you have to have 5, if you need more tabs, then the 5th tab needs to be more, and that more would bring up a choice of additional pages or tabs that you might want to do. On Android, there's no limit other than maybe the user cognition of your user interface. So that's the business app for getting started. Eventually, we're going to put up customer list here, employee list there, the parts list there with inventory and so on. And then we could go from choosing a customer to get to their orders and so on. So we'll just make sure that's saved. We can give this as our Marine Adventures. This is a toolbar, and it has a label within it that is aligned to the contents of its parent, whatever that is, in this case, the toolbar. So let's go down and say this is the Marine. The text is Marine Adventures, a mobile app. All right. Okay. We'll save that for the next time. So in all of this, we have made sure our development environment is set up. We talked about the business scenario of the app we're going to build up over time, as well as other apps we'll be looking at with mobile functionality. We used the ID a little bit. We built a couple first app and played with a couple samples, and we're getting started now on building the mobile app that's going to match some of the functionality of our desktop application for parts and customers and order inventory and settings. Lots of resources. Again, when you go to my blog, you can download. This is where the development environment and help in the Doc Wiki is available. There's blogs with all sorts of great articles by Jim McKeith and Serena DuPont. We did all of that. What you should do is try out different project templates, try out different samples, explore more of the IDE, maybe set a breakpoint in an on-click handler and use the debugger. Take a look at the sample snippets and videos. Next time, we're going to look at styles, listbox, list view for building more complete user interface of our business app. Work with binding of data to the user interface controls using live bindings, and this thing called a prototype bind source, where we can prototype the database and our user interface before we actually have the database using the prototype bind source. We'll take a look at all of that next time. And okay, over to Jim and Al with what questions have come in, and that's my email address if you have to follow up.
So there's been some questions not specific to today's, but just some general questions about development here.
Okay, well, we've got about 9 minutes until the top of the hour, so bring it on.
One of the questions was, when is the replay going to be available?
As soon as I can edit it. So I'm recording it on 3 different machines just in case, and I will put the replay up and post a link to it from my blog, and I guess the web team may put the link also in that registration landing page for the classes. But as soon as humanly possible, probably this afternoon. So look for my blog being updated not only with the slides, but maybe a YouTube link and an MP4 if I can put that up somewhere.
Do you see a way to work out MBAS examples with a SQL database?
So if you're talking about backend as a service, we're going to cover that in lesson 6. And then you can look on our blogs and past skill sprints and code rages for other things we've done to show you how to use backend as a service, but we'll cover that in lesson 6.
So we have an example of doing user sign up with and log in with BAS. Is there a way to do that without BAS?
Well, you could create your own server-side user enablement. You put a data table or database somewhere, put it on a REST server, put it on a SOAP server, put it on a multi-tier backend data snap server with a database. You could build some logic to sort of calculate what a user validity might be. But yeah, you can create your own backend service and put it on a server somewhere. Put it on an Amazon instance or an Azure instance or Rackspace or anybody else that has just the ability to put applications out in the cloud.
Can a data snap server access multiple databases on the same instance of Microsoft SQL Server?
You can create, and we're going to cover data snap in lesson 4 with multi-tier. You could create any number of connections to Microsoft SQL Server. You can put them in the same server module, or you can have multiple server modules with different connections to different databases. So yes, the answer is yes, you can. As long as you have the licenses for connectivity to SQL Server.
Yeah, that's true. Can you run multiple data snap servers at the same time on one machine?
As long as they're listening on different ports, yes. DataSnap uses TCP, HTTP, HTTPS. As long as those DataSnap servers are listening on different ports, as opposed to the same port. If they need to be on the same port, then you got to put them on different machines.
When running a Mac and VMware Fusion, so Windows inside of VMware Fusion, when you connect your iPhone, should it be to the USB port? Should it be connected to the Mac or the PC?
iOS devices need to be connected to the Mac. If they're connected to the PC, they just look like a storage drive for the parts of the disk that you can get to, like for your pictures.
When organizing the UI, or Can you organize the UI into multiple forms for mobile app? Does the form logic work the same as it did for VCL apps with create and destroy, or are there any special limitations?
No, you could have multiple forms. You could have a main form that you would start up on a mobile device, and then you can show other forms.
So I think the show modal doesn't work on Android.
Correct.
Well, there's special workaround you have to do because of the way modal works.
Yeah. But you can do form, whatever it is, form 1.show, form 2.show, form 3.show. You have the support to do that. It's better to have one form in mobile and to use things like tabs and tab controls, whether those tabs have tabs at the bottom or they're just dots or no dots, and you're making your transitions between tabs inside of one form, but it's your choice. You can create multiple forms if you want.
Yeah. Usually you're going to want to think about, if you're creating a lot of forms, you might consider if you're really designing for a mobile device.
Yeah.
We had someone saying, I can't have 120 forms. Well, that maybe doesn't fit on mobile.
You can if you want, but then you're using the same kind of coding you would use in different worlds to show those forms. Again, the form name, whatever its name is, not its file name, but its component name. A form is an object, and you can call it show method.
So here's someone that was using the T banner ad on Android. They're saying they're having trouble with it on iOS. I don't know if there's issues with that.
Not that I'm aware of. Marco did in-app payments and banner ads in a skill sprint. So go to search developer skill sprints and go and watch Marco's session. It was a couple weeks ago. The replay link is there. And he showed how to use banner ads. It's just, we're not going to cover banner ads. Maybe we'll have to put that somewhere along the way, Al and Jim. Maybe we'll figure out how to put a banner ad in maybe a little mobile app. Maybe we'll do that as an extra and put the sample up somewhere. But
you can easily go out and grab the Marco's.
Yeah, so this is just the T banner ad component. It just takes up, you put it and it takes up part of your application. So we can align it to the, where is it here? The banner ad. Let's put it on the form and align it to the bottom, right? And then we just have to go and get the information associated with the banner ad. Then they'll just show up down there. Yeah, but Marco showed it working. So I don't see, other than if you have banner ad support in your Apple account, if that's correct.
Can you explain the differences between app method and XE6, personal, architect, enterprise, etc.?
So app method comes in an individual and in business. Those are the two kind of choices. And you can choose how many platforms you want. So for example, if you want app method for iOS or app method for iOS and Android, whether you want Windows, all 4 platforms, so you can choose. Go to the appmethod.com site. It'll give you all the choices. Delphi C++ and RAD Studio includes everything for both Windows VCL, Windows console applications, and so on, and FireMonkey. App Method only uses FireMonkey. There's no VCL. And then if you're looking at the different editions, again, App Method, there's 2. There's sort of building an application for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 platforms, or there's the business edition, which includes all the multi-tier and cloud and everything else. In Delphi C++ RAD Studio, you have your choices of how you want to buy parts: Professional, Enterprise, Ultimate, Architect, Starter Edition. So I don't know that we have you could look at the feature matrix comparisons, but it's more pay as you go. It's a subscription in App Method versus buying updates and buying new user licenses on the RAD Studio Delphi C++ builder. So it's a little bit of a different buying method because you're buying a subscription on App Method versus buying a license to a specific product. But then we have upgrade pricing and recharge program for making sure you have the latest updates. Usually it's App Methods for people that are new. They don't have any existing VCL or any existing apps. They're trying to build a multi-device app for mobile and desktop, or just mobile, so they don't need all the rest of that other stuff. Think of RAD Studio, Delphi, and C++ Builder as a superset of functionality. It includes everything that App Method already has.
Yeah.
Anything else to add, Al or Jim? on that point.
That sounds right. Exactly what I was going to say. That method's a subset.
Nope, you covered it all, David.
There's still a couple minutes left here.
Here's a question. Are we going to provide any design patterns for designing best user interfaces with good responsiveness?
So we don't have design patterns for user interface. We have design patterns for objects that are available, and you can get at those through the design pattern tools for best practices for object creation and object architectures. I think the best way to look. Go ahead, Al.
You show the 8 templates. So those are the 8 most common types of apps people are creating.
Yeah. So these 8 templates are mapped to, for example, Apple's specification for user interface requirements. That's why the tab only gives you 4 tabs. And then again, the 5th one would need to be a more. Our tutorials also will take you down the path of doing good design of your applications so that they'll be accepted. But ultimately, you should also check the design guidelines for Android that Google puts out and design guidelines for iOS and OS X that Apple puts out, because that'll give you a better understanding if you want to be able to put applications in the store and get them accepted along the way. Android's pretty loose in that respect. Apple is very strict in what you can and cannot do for look and feel, user interface design. Our components, in a sense, guide you in, and the templates, as Al mentioned, guide you into doing the right thing. But of course, you always have to submit an iOS app to Apple and hope for the best. If you followed our settings from our components and didn't change things, like have a toolbar at the top, not at the bottom. Have your tab settings at the bottom, not at the top. Android, usually they're at the top, but they can be at the bottom. So there's some general guidelines. I would go to the user interface guidelines for both platforms and use those. You can look at our documentation. We have a tutorial book. It's a PDF, about 300 pages. And again, it's all the mobile tutorials, and we guide you using the best practices that we know will work. If you go and work not only the lessons and what we're doing here in this 6 lesson set, but also in those tutorials that are online, you'll have a very good chance of building the right things. And again, the template here built the right thing. Toolbar at the top, tab sets at the bottom. Yeah. But you're a programmer, so you can do whatever you want, ultimately.
Yeah. That's really what it comes down to, is we give you the option to do however you want to. Here's a question about connecting to via SSL.
Yes, you can connect through Secure Socket Layer. We have Indie components for doing that. Down here, there's a whole bunch of Indie clients and servers for doing things with HTTPS, for example, and TCP and Secure Socket Layer. The backend as a service, for example, we'll use some of that. We're not going to cover that specifically in all the lessons. We'll talk about it in the data snap in lesson 4. We'll talk a little bit about that. But you can have full secure communication between your mobile device and whatever it's talking to using Secure Socket Layer or using HTTPS, which uses the socket layer under the covers.
Okay. And yeah, the REST components can also use the SSL.
Yep.
Someone says it usually takes more time to compile an application for Android, but it is really fast on your machine. Is there some sort of settings that they can change, or what's the best way to get that as fast as possible?
Well, it's based on the machine you have, how fast the hard drive is, how fast the chip is, and then the rest of it is sending over to the UPS. Over the USB port to the device. I could have in all these pre-build them so they were already there and running, but we'll only compile the parts that we need to compile unless you do a build all. So if you say compile, then we'll compile any changes that you've made, link it all together, and send it off to the device.
Now, you mentioned a PDF book on user interface. Where's the URL for that?
Okay, let me get it. It's so again, go to my blog, and there's the lesson slide. Download there. If we go to the let's see. Let's go to App Method. That might find. Oh, sorry, docwiki.app method. That might find it faster than otherwise. Did I do that right? Okay, here we go. Okay, so the mobile tutorials. Let's see if the link is there. Here's the PDF. So that link is. How can I do this without downloading the PDF? Let me go over to the Q&A panel, I guess. And questions. Okay. I have to find that question now. Oh, the PDF book. Okay, Paul, here you go. Paste and send to all. So there's the PDF. Should show up in the Q&A area. I hope. I think it showed up. Did it show up, guys?
Yeah, it did.
Okay. And that is, it's like 300 pages. I mean, you can print it out or you could send it to a print on demand. We don't have it online as a print on demand yet. They're looking at how we might do that. But it's all the mobile tutorials for Object Pascal and C++. They're sort of side-by-side code that are in the help and in the doc wiki are combined into a nice PDF book form that you could send off to Amazon print on demand or whatever print on demand site if you want a hardbound or softbound book that you can carry around. Or just have your printer run for a while and hole punch it and put it together. So we're a little past time, but if there's maybe a last question or two, guys, and if you have more, you can come back. We're doing C++ at 12 Pacific time and Object Pascal at 1 o'clock Pacific time. If I didn't do anything stupid, I'll probably get the replays edited here in the next 55 minutes and run those. But if not, I'll be here live anyway. Not going anywhere. Next lesson is lesson 2 on Wednesday. Same time, same station.
All right. And what's that lesson on?
I don't know. Oh, sorry. It's on. God, you guys. There it is. Lesson 2, turning up the style and data. So we're going to use styles and play with styles to look at how the styling mechanism with FireMonkey lets you create all these great looking user interfaces. You can create your own custom styles. And you can select some standard styles that we have. If you want your buttons to look different than the default buttons on Android or iOS, because you're doing something cool and different, you want your app to stand out, we're going to show and talk about the difference between a list box and a list view. We're going to play with binding data in memory using live bindings. We're going to use this prototype bind source. We're going to play the scenario that, let's say you don't have the database yet, but you know what the data model is, and you want to be able to build up the user interface. The prototype bind source lets you create data fields on the fly in memory, use the binding mechanism to bind it to the customers and orders and all of that. So it's a nice way to get started on the user interface while maybe the database people are still working on the actual database that you're going to connect to. So it's the next step in building up this business app of customers, and it ties into these list view and list box objects that do wonderful things in part of your user interface when you need to list things like customers or parts or orders and so on. So that'll be in lesson 2, and then from there we go to connecting to a real database, to the Interbase database on your mobile device, and then lesson 4. Taking the database, putting it on a remote server, and using the multi-tier architecture for App Method and Red Studio to connect from a lightweight, thin client mobile application to the back-end database. And then 5, we hook devices together with app tethering, and 6, we do the back-end as a service support. If you want to use parts of the system in a cloud for your object storage, user management, and push notifications. So we'll cover that, and that'll be all the 6 lessons. So next time it's styles and data and live bindings.
So actually there was a comment about how to, saying that things don't line up the seams on the same way on screen as they do on the Android device. And that really comes down to, like you were seeing there, is that if you don't set your alignments correctly, that's what's going to happen.
Yep. Use layouts and alignments and anchors, and if you say it's at that pixel, it'll be at that pixel on every device.
Yeah. So if you're saying it's at this pixel and then the screen you're running it on is smaller than the one you're viewing on the IDE, then it's not going to fit right.
Yeah. Now, if I had my layout where I anchored it in the layout and I finally had the layout set to the whole client area, then that button would have appeared in the lower right-hand corner of that layout that was aligned to the client area. Now, things can happen. If you create bigger layouts and you start crunching them down, sometimes you're going to have collisions. So you have to be careful of, if you have multiple layouts on a form, that when you're resizing for different devices, you should be aware and make sure that you're not having those layouts hover over each other, right? So you'd align one layout to the top, one layout to the bottom. Again, you need to be aware of it, but in general, if you do your layouts and your alignments and anchors properly, it'll look good on every resolution. Now, if you try to put a grid with 100 columns and 100 rows, it's not going to align. I mean, you won't be able to make it readable enough. So you might have to then go to multiple tabs or multiple sliding windows within your application. But under the covers, we're mapping to native window on Android. We're mapping to the UI kit and device surface on iOS. So use scaled layout. That's a good one that scales nicely all of your controls and fonts, if that's what you want to do. Or you can control it in code and settings.
Yeah, if you look at the different layouts and alignment options, there's a lot you can do to make it dynamically flow across devices. Usually there's two scenarios you want to approach. You want to approach different size phones, and then on tablets, you want to lay things out differently, which either you use like form family or use frames and lay things out differently with frames.
There also is form factor. Each form has a form factor property and sub-properties. So you can take a look at form factor where you can set up for a phone or a pad. You can also write code in your form create to query the client area, the client height and width, and write code to do the appropriate thing. If you've got a very complex user interface, you can query to see if you're running on a tablet or a phone as well. There are global variables that let you say, if I'm on a phone, then maybe you display a different form. You might create a form for tablets and a form for phone. You might create a form layout for several different form factors and then have the startup code try to fit the best one. And that's what form families do. We have a next generation technology that will give you much more control. But for now, you can create a form family. And then when the code starts up and the app starts up, it'll look at the resolution and try to match whichever form fits best for your device. So all those things are possible. So many things, you can never cover it at all.
After the application compiles on x86 Windows machine, where does it deposit it on the Mac through PA server?
There's a Scratch directory. So over on my Macintosh side, first it's over in Windows. So if I go to, let me Alt Tab to my Explorer and go to my projects, documents, Embarcadero, Studio. Here's my projects. So for example, I don't know which one it was here. Okay. And here, debug, project 1, bin, there's the APK, right? And over in my projects, Win32 for that default project that didn't have a subdirectory. Here's, that was Win32. There's the project 1 exe. Let's go to iOS device, debug, project 1. There's the app bundle. Now over on the Macintosh side, if my Mac is still running, let's hide the reflector. Over here, I can hit S. And there's the Scratch directory. So they're put in users. I'm David I, PA server Scratchter. All right. So there's a Scratch directory and there's a configuration file and setting. If you want to have your app show up in a different Scratch directory, you can tell the PA server where you want your apps to get placed. Okay. But it's usually user, your name, PA server, and Scratch-dir. But just start up the PA server and hit S, and it'll remind you what the Scratch directory path is.
So someone's got a PA server error about zip-align is missing. So they need to go into what is it? It's the SDK manager, right?
Go to SDK manager and say update local cache and or delete your current SDK connection and then add it again.
Zip-align exe is part of Android.
Oh,
So they need to make sure that they have their if
their paths
should have
correct.
installed, yeah, you should have installed the Android SDK and NDK with the installation. If you didn't, then you'll need to install that manually and then point in the SDK manager to the location with zip-align.
And again, go to the DocWiki or watch one of the videos, and I show you. On the video, I show you both ways, whether you have Android pre-installed and how to add and point to where the SDK is, or if you use the installed and it's already set up.
What is the process for submitting an app to the Apple Store?
You can find that documentation on Apple's site for submitting the Apple Store. In our world, I would create a release version. I would have a deployment provisioning profile that I would create over in my developer account on Apple. And we have the steps for doing that in the documentation for going through the steps. But so it'd be a release build to the store. So if I switch back to problem is I'm on
the steps in the documentation, it walks you right through it.
Yeah. But over here in the IDE, if I go here to iOS device, if I go to target, let's say I want to do my iPhone, I go to configuration. So I was doing a debug build. You would select application store or ad hoc to be able to this ad hoc deployment, but application store. I'd set that instead of a debug release, and I'd go up here and do a release build to get the ultimate. So I'd do that release build for the build configuration for the whole application. Then under iOS device, choose the target and choose application store under configuration there.
Here's the link to the DocWiki that walks through the process.
Yep.
I've gone through it before, so you follow through it.
Yep.
It's pretty easy. Unless you somehow get multiple provisioning profiles set up, then it's complicated. But
yeah.
You shouldn't have that happen.
So we step you through the steps both for Google Play, the Android store, and for iOS. So follow the documentation. And you can read the documentation elsewhere. Go ahead. Sorry, Jim.
How about support for iOS 8 and Android L?
Yeah, eventually. When they're released.
They're not out yet.
They're not out yet. So we're doing development and testing with them under NDA, or under preview, just like everybody else. And when they are released, we'll do updates. We'll do releases.
Yeah, there are certain restrictions about what we can release before they're actually released.
So we had iOS 7. I mean, we shipped before iOS 7. We shipped XE 6 before iOS 7 and OS 10 Mavericks was released. Wasn't really any changes for Mavericks. For iOS 7, there was a new look. We had an iOS 7 style file, I think, the next day that you could download. And then when iOS 7.1 made some changes to the simulator, it took a little while longer to fix some things. I think it was about a week. So, yeah, we're on it. Just as we've been on it for years with Windows. We were ahead of even Visual Studio on touch support for Windows 7, for example. They came out a few months later. We were out before Windows 7 was released with Microsoft's permission because we had the Golden Master SDK. So we're on it on all the platforms, meaning we're working on it.
Apparently, Google is missing zip-align. So if you update the SDK, you might not have access to zip-align anymore, but you can download that separately.
Okay.
That's good to know.
There was a question about installing the Android SDK driver. Depending on the device you have, for Samsung, I went to the Samsung site. There are all sorts of other sites as well that have USB drivers, either universal drivers for Android or device-specific ones. So if you have a certain device, go to your manufacturer and go to their download area, their support area, or whatever it's called, and they'll probably have a Windows USB driver. If not, you can search for the name of the device and USB driver and find a download.
I think I have a blog post about how to make a USB or a universal driver.
Yep.
Let's see. Yep, I do.
Yeah, we did that for Google Glass,
Google
right?
Glass.
Yeah.
Yes, because they hadn't released it yet. Let's see. So a lot of people want to know how they can access these videos so they can rewatch them before the next Wednesday.
Well, I don't know if I can get the first one up. I'll try to get it put up before Wednesday. I need to check with the guys here to see whether I can just put them up somewhere or whether I have to put them someplace and then they update it. But since they're so short, I'll probably get dispensation. Just look at my blog and I'll let everybody know. After the fact, of course, they'll all be placed somewhere as well. But because of the short time horizon, I'll work this afternoon. And while I'm finishing up some stuff for lesson 2 for Wednesday, I will edit the video. I'll probably use the earlier Object Pascal video because I didn't have that screwed up layouts where I was fooling around. But we'll put all the Q&A for both, and I'll put it somewhere and put the link on my blog and or send it to everybody or both.
So are there plans to support older versions of XE when new versions of Android and iOS come out?
I don't know what when when
iOS 8 comes out, are we going to backport it to XE4?
I don't know if that'll be possible. The best thing is to move forward. And
we haven't so far because usually there's a lot of changes.
Yeah. Yep. The main thing is keep moving forward.
Yep. If you're not on the aware of the recharge program, that's a great way to keep moving program and save a lot of money. Just
update all along the way. Each time we do an update, you get to update for less than waiting for versions and doing an update or getting a new license. In the case of App Method, you're on an annual subscription, so you just keep renewing and you can just get everything as we keep releasing App Method. So worst nightmare is updating my mobile device. Well, yeah, I usually wait a couple days and see if something gets screwed up on the device side. Or I update, as you saw, I updated my iPhone to 7.1.2 and not my iPad yet, just in case.
Running beta OSs on mobile devices can be tricky. And, well, even updating to iOS 7, there's a lot of people updated to that. And they're like, whoa, I don't like this. I'm going to go back. But you can't.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's ways, but yeah. They're not good ways.
I use REST object to connect to a web service for data controls.
Answer is yes. We're going to cover REST in lesson 6. And again, Newt, for now, use my blog. I can update that every minute, every hour. If we post things back to the landing page website, the web team usually pushes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and there's certain time horizons. So you can bookmark the school landing page just in case, but also keep track of my blog, and I'll be putting up stuff for each of the lessons that'll help you out. So, and that's where I'll put up the slide link for the future lessons. I'm doing the first 4, and then Jim and Al are going to work on going to give the last 2. So, because I'll be on vacation, sorry. And Jim, I'll talk to you and Al again about that. He says.
Oh, what's this? This is news to me.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah. No, it's not. Thanks.
Great.
All right, everybody. Bye.